brothers walking toward the direction of Smollett's apartment building, and in this video you can clearly see a flash of a red-brimmed hat. Also, the new video shows Smollett walking in the middle of the street in the same.
What Jussie Smollett pulled off wasn't just wild, it shocked the whole country. He claimed he was ambushed, beaten, and humiliated in the middle of Chicago's icy streets. The media ate it up instantly. Headlines exploded, the internet caught fire. But right from the jump, something felt off. The footage didn't line up. The timeline? Sketchy. The whole thing had cracks. And when investigators started digging, what they found flipped the whole story upside down. The truth hit hard, and even years later, the mess is still leaving marks. This wasn't just about one actor. It exposed how perception can be twisted and how lies, when loud enough, can drown out everything else. Flashback to January 29, 2019. Jussie Smollett, best known back then for playing Jamal Lyon on the hit show Empire, walked into a Chicago police station with a dramatic tale that would hijack national news within hours. He said it all went down just after 2 a.m. He'd stepped out to grab a sandwich from Subway when, out of nowhere, two men allegedly attacked him in the freezing cold. Smollett said they shouted racial and homophobic slurs, dumped bleach on him, roughed him up, and threw a rope around his neck like it was some kind of noose. Then came the line that lit the whole thing on fire. They screamed, "This is MAGA country." He told police he was on the phone with his manager, Frank Gatson, during the whole attack. By the time cops showed up at his place around 2:40 a.m., Jussie still had that rope around his neck, but later admitted he had taken it off, then put it back on before they arrived. What was really going on? Allegedly, it was Gatson who told him to leave the noose on. And for the next few days, the story was solid, at least on the surface. The headlines painted Jussie as a victim of a brutal hate crime, and people were told to rally behind him. But while the world was reacting with outrage, Chicago cops were already picking up on some weird gaps. Smollett claimed one of the attackers was white, but when police dug through the footage, no one fitting that description showed up. Instead, they found two shadowy figures on grainy video, both dressed head to toe in heavy hoodies and winter gear, faces completely hidden, and to make things worse, the camera closest to where it all supposedly happened, it was pointed the wrong way. Didn't catch a single second of the incident. Still, at that point, Smollett's story hadn't been questioned out loud. The media didn't know about the creepy letter that showed up a week earlier at the Empire set, addressed straight to Jussie. It had a disturbing drawing, a stick figure hanging from a tree. The message, "Smollett, you will die." Pieced together with letters cut from a magazine. There was even white powder inside the envelope, which later turned out to be crushed Tylenol. Jussie told cops he believed the letter and the street attack were connected, and said he was being targeted for calling out the Trump administration. The timing made it a firestorm. The story tapped into deep conversations about hate crimes, racism, and LGBTQ+ discrimination. But even then, some folks weren't buying it. One NBC News staffer said she had parked just around the corner that night and didn't hear a single sound. No yelling, no fight, nothing. Then came the moment everything started falling apart. Surveillance cameras caught two men just days before the alleged attack, buying ski masks, gloves, and a red hat. But that wasn't even the wildest part. A $3,500 payment from Jussie Smollett to these same guys showed up in the records. Turns out they weren't just some random attackers off the street. They were brothers, Abimbola and Olabinjo Osundairo, both Nigerian American, both familiar faces. These weren't strangers. They had worked as extras on Empire, even trained at the gym with Smollett. But on February 13, 2019, when police raided their place, the entire story started to crumble. Inside their home, police found everything: the rope used in the so-called attack, ski mask, gloves, and that red hat, all bought just days earlier. They even had the receipt trail to back it up. Surveillance footage showed the brothers buying the items together. And that $3,500 check Smollett wrote them? He said it was for a fitness and nutrition plan. But now, it was looking a lot more like hush money. Once cops brought in the Osundairo brothers for questioning, they cracked fast. They spilled everything. They said it was all fake. The attack had been staged. Smollett planned the whole thing, even drove them out to the exact location days before for a rehearsal. Yeah, a dress rehearsal for a fake hate crime. One of the brothers told investigators, "I was down to do it because if we do this for him, he could probably help us out with our careers." That one line said it all. This wasn't just deception. This was ambition wrapped in lies. Once the brothers confessed, everything flipped. Smollett's whole timeline started crumbling fast. Cops stopped seeing him as the victim and named him the mastermind. On February 20th, 2019, just weeks after the story first broke, Jussie was indicted for filing a false police report, a felony. The evidence stacked sky high. A fake beatdown, fake attackers, even fake dialogue. All set up like a twisted movie scene. And according to police, the reason behind it all? Publicity. Smollett was reportedly upset that the creepy letter sent to the Empire set hadn't made enough noise in the media, so he decided to take it up a notch. And the fallout hit fast and hard. That same day, Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie T. Johnson went live and didn't hold back. He called Jussie out in front of the whole country, saying the whole thing was a setup because Smollett wasn't happy with his paycheck. He said Jussie made up the story to score sympathy and spotlight, but just when it seemed like the case was locked, bam, another twist. On March 26, barely a month after being charged, all charges were suddenly dropped. No trial, no courtroom drama, just a quiet deal behind closed doors. Smollett handed over his $10,000 bond and agreed to do community service, and that was it. Case closed, no conviction, no explanation that satisfied anyone. The public was stunned. Cops were furious. Even Chicago's mayor called it out. What looked like a slam dunk case turned into legal chaos. And the backlash didn't just come from the police, it came from all sides. Chicago wasn't letting this slide, and not by a long shot. If the prosecutors weren't going to hold Smollett accountable, the city was ready to step in. In April 2019, they hit him with a lawsuit for $130,000. The amount they claimed was wasted on chasing down the fake attack. But Jussie didn't fold. He fired back with a countersuit saying he was the one being dragged through the mud and blamed city officials for trying to cover up their own mess. It was clear. The legal drama was far from over. While Smollett tried to move on, Chicago was already cooking up a second hit. The backlash over the dropped charges had people furious, and city officials weren't about to just walk away. Then in February 2020, almost a year later, everything changed. Enter Dan K. Webb, a special prosecutor brought in to clean up the mess, and he wasn't playing. Webb slapped Smollett with 6 new felony charges of disorderly conduct tied directly to the staged hate crime. This wasn't just about punishing Jussie. This was about showing the public that justice still meant something. The trial kicked off in late 2021, and for the first time, the full story came out under oath. The Osundaro brothers took the stand and laid it all out. They said Smollett was behind every detail, the planning, the script, even a dry run before the fake attack. They claimed he told them exactly what to say, how to yell the slurs, how to pour the bleach, and even gave directions on tying the rope not too tight so it could be slipped off easily after. It was like watching a behind-the-scenes breakdown of a Hollywood hoax, only this time it was real life. Jussie even gave the brothers notes. Yep, actual notes on where to stand, how to act, and how to run off camera once the scene was over. His defense team tried to flip the script, saying the brothers were lying to save their own skins, but the evidence didn't lie. There were receipts, literal ones, checks, surveillance footage, phone calls, text messages, all flying back and forth right before and right after the fake attack. And that $3,500 Jussie claimed was for fitness training. The timing told a whole different story. During closing arguments, the prosecution didn't hold back. They told the jury straight up, this wasn't some mix-up. This wasn't confusion. It was a full-on performance, and the jury bought it. On December 9, 2021, Jussie Smollett was convicted on 5 out of 6 felony counts of disorderly conduct. For lying to police about a hate crime he staged himself. It was a brutal fall. Once an Emmy-nominated star, now branded a convicted felon, all in front of the entire nation. But even with the verdict in, Smollett wasn't done. At his sentencing on March 10, 2022, he shocked the courtroom. He stood up, raised his voice, and shouted, "I am not suicidal," saying if anything happened to him behind bars, it wouldn't be by his own hand. The judge didn't budge. Smollett was sentenced to 150 days in Cook County Jail, 30 months probation, and over $120,000 in restitution, plus a $25,000 fine. But then came another twist. Just 5 days later, his legal team filed an emergency appeal, calling the sentence too harsh and claiming he wasn't safe in jail. And in a rare move, the appellate court agreed. On March 16, 2022, Smollett walked out on bond and pending appeal. To some, it looked like he'd played the system and walked away clean, again. Others saw it differently. They thought Jussie was just buying time. But one thing was clear. Public opinion had flipped hard. The sympathy was long gone. Politicians went quiet. Celebrities who once backed him, nowhere to be found. Smollett wasn't seen as a victim anymore, and he became a punchline, a symbol of how things could be twisted and a loud warning to anyone watching. But the biggest twist, it was still loading, and when it hit years later, it sent the whole case spiraling right back into the spotlight. By 2024, most folks had moved on. Smollett's name had faded into a cautionary tale, whispered in Hollywood, used in political debates, and tossed around in late-night monologues. But behind closed doors, his legal team had been moving in silence, working to flip the script one last time. Then in November 2024, boom, they got their win. The Illinois Supreme Court dropped a legal bombshell. They overturned Smollett's conviction, just like that. The court sided with his lawyers, saying his Fifth Amendment rights were violated. Their claim? Smollett had already made a deal back in 2019. He did his community service, gave up that $10,000 bond, and the case was supposed to be done. Charging him again years later? That, they argued, was double jeopardy. The ruling shook the legal world. But for the public, it wasn't celebration. It was straight-up confusion and fury. Even Special Prosecutor Dan Webb had to step up with a statement just to make things crystal clear. He said, "This ruling has nothing to do with Mr. Smollett's innocence. The court didn't question the mountain of evidence. It was a technicality that flipped the case, not a finding of truth." And just like that, the controversy came full circle. The truth? Smollett never even challenged the evidence, not the videos, not the texts, not the check. He only went after the process. In the end, he didn't beat the case with proof. He beat it on a technicality. The conviction was wiped off the record, but not out of people's minds. He had only spent a handful of days behind bars before getting out on bond, and now, with the court's reversal, he wouldn't spend another second. But to many, this didn't feel like justice, not even close. Not to the city of Chicago, which had poured over $130,000 and countless hours into chasing the truth. Not to the officers who sifted through camera footage, receipts, and timelines around the clock. And definitely not to the public, who still remembered the chaos from that freezing January night in 2019 and the tidal wave of headlines that came right after. The conviction may be gone, but the doubt still lingers. To this day, there are still people who defend Smollett, saying he was a victim, a scapegoat, someone the system wanted to make an example out of. But far more folks see it for what it was. A stage setup that burned trust, wasted time, and made it harder for real victims to be taken seriously. And that kind of damage, you can't erase that with a court ruling, because Smollett didn't just fake a crime, he crafted a whole narrative, one that shattered public trust, and once that story broke apart, there was no putting it back together. Even with the conviction overturned, Hollywood didn't come running. By the time the decision dropped in 2024, the spotlight had moved on. In Empire, that door was already closed. Smollett didn't get a big farewell. There was no dramatic exit, no final scene. He was just quietly cut from the last episodes of Empire during the show's 6th and final season. The producers didn't say much. They just moved on, and so did Hollywood. And since then, the phone basically stopped ringing. No big roles, no major projects. Behind the scenes, he kept trying to work, but it wasn't like before. The spotlight had dimmed. In 2021, he made his directorial debut with B-Boy Blues, a film adaptation of a black LGBTQ+ love story. It picked up some attention in indie circles, but that wasn't enough to clear the cloud still hanging over his name. He was working, but rebuilding his reputation. That was a whole different story. By 2023, the pressure had taken its toll. Smollett checked into an outpatient rehab program, something his team described as a move toward healing after several intense emotional years. Later, he spoke to People magazine and called his arrest on February 21, 2019, the darkest day of his life. He said, "That's when everything clicked to me of what was happening. A lot of things tested my mental, but one thing I never lost, I never started thinking that I was somebody I'm not." To this day, Jussie still says he's innocent, and he's angry about how it all went down. That's it, 'cause it's the truth, he said. But for most people watching from the outside, the damage feels final. The wave of support that once lifted him is long gone. The crowd that once defended him, mostly silent now. Taraji P. Henson has been one of the rare ones still standing by his side. She even stirred major backlash after comparing Jussie's situation to Emmett Till's in a now infamous Free Jussie post. His sister, Journey Smollett, also stood up after sentencing, publicly declaring Jussie is innocent. But public opinion, it had already shifted, and it wasn't shifting back. He's been mocked in rap bars, ripped apart in late-night comedy, dragged on news panels, and clowned by politicians. Like it or not, Jussie's name has become code for stage deception, a punchline with a shadow. Still, Smollett hasn't thrown in the towel. In interviews, he says he's still creating, working on music, film, and trying to build something new. His latest project, The Lost Holiday, follows a man raising his adopted daughter after the loss of his partner. It's fictional, but it hits close, real close. Underneath the layers of controversy, Jussie says there's still one thing that keeps him fighting. "I pray to have a child," he said. "I can't imagine my life ending without having been a father. That's why I'm still in the game. That's why I keep pushing." He wants his future child to see the whole story, not just the fall. "I want them to see that I got through it, that I didn't fold, that I kept trying to leave the world just a little better than I found it." And maybe that day will come. Maybe peace is still possible for him, but no matter what he builds next, the controversy won't vanish. Because to many, Jussie Smollett didn't just fall from grace. He lit the stage on fire on the way down. Long before the hoax made him a household name, his story was already being written, just not the way he planned. Before the 2019 firestorm, Jussie Smollett's record already had a few quiet warning signs, scandals that got buried under what would later explode. One of those early red flags came in 2007. That year, in Los Angeles, Smollett was arrested for DUI. But it wasn't just about drinking and driving. When officers pulled him over, he didn't give his own name. He gave them his brother's. He later pled no contest to 3 misdemeanors, giving false information to law enforcement, driving under the influence, and driving without a valid license. The punishment? Light. Just a fine and 3 years of probation. But what stood out wasn't the sentence, it was the pattern, a willingness to twist the truth. And that pattern would echo louder in the years to come. Then came Empire, the show that launched him into stardom. By 2015, Smollett had become a breakout star playing Jamal Lyon, an openly gay artist navigating the cutthroat, often homophobic music industry. He earned praise, applause, and eventually controversy. One season, Jamal's character was suddenly paired romantically with a woman. Fans were stunned, and some were furious. They felt it undermined LGBTQ+ representation. Smollett stood by the choice, saying it was meant to spark a conversation about fluidity and sexuality, but critics weren't buying it. They accused the show of trying to straight-wash its most visible gay character to boost ratings. And the drama didn't stop there. After the city of Chicago sued him for more than $130,000 spent chasing the staged hate crime, Smollett hit back hard, filing a countersuit for malicious prosecution. The legal back and forth dragged on, and by 2024, both sides finally reached a settlement. The terms kept under wraps. But one thing was clear. Neither side fully backed down. Even with his conviction overturned, the tension never really left the table. That lawsuit stayed on the books, a reminder that this was never just about headlines or public drama. This was about money, reputation, and a city that straight up refused to let it slide. And when you look at all the forgotten details, the DUI, the fake name, the strange story choices, the mysterious letter, it starts to paint a bigger picture. Because long before Jussie Smollett was caught faking a hate crime, there were already signs he was willing to blur the line between truth and fiction. There was a time when his name carried weight in Hollywood, rising fast, respected for his voice, his presence, and his activism. But today, that same name sparks something very different. It's the kind of stain you don't just bounce back from. Even though his conviction was overturned, his reputation never came back. The public saw the rope, the tears, the interviews, the outrage, and then the collapse. All of it played out in real time. And even now, as Jussie holds firm to his innocence, saying he never lied, never staged anything, most people have already tuned out. To his supporters, he's a victim of a broken system. To his critics, he's the face of performative victimhood in the clout-chasing era. And to everyone else, he's the ultimate cautionary tale of what happens when chasing attention becomes more important than telling the truth. Even Jussie seems to feel it. People can say what they want about you. They can even put you behind bars, but they can't control my mind. They can't control my spirit. They can't control the knowledge I have of who I am. That defiance still shows up in his interviews, but it's not enough to rewrite the past, not enough to erase the memes, the headlines, the courtroom footage, not enough to fix the career that went up in flames. Because no matter how many films he directs, no matter how long the internet scrolls on, there will always be that one moment that defines him. The night he said he was attacked, And the day the world found out, he made it all up. If you want more stories that uncover the rise, fall, and everything in between of today's most controversial celebrities, don't forget to subscribe to Fame Feast. Hit that button and stay fed with the realest drama out there.